You've just been watching some footage from my time in Snowdonia at the end of November when I was photographing the fantastic mossy woodlands and the narrow wooded gorges. Now I'll show you some photographs from that trip shortly, but firstly you might recall that a few months ago I made a video about why I cancelled my order for the new Sony a7R4. Well, Sony were kind enough to send me the R4 to try out for a couple of weeks, so that's the camera that I used for my time in Snowdonia. And I really enjoyed using it, and I was really pleased to see that they finally added some more crop options, so you can now shoot square and 4:3 in camera. I would love to see them add the 4:5 crop, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. So after a couple of weeks I had to send the camera back, which just didn't bother me at all, not even in the slightest. I stand by everything that I said before in the previous video, and sticking with my a7R3 was 100% the right decision just for me and how I use my camera. However, the R4 wasn't the only shiny new thing I was using in Wales, as I'd also purchased a new Jitso tripod and Arca-Swiss C1 Cube geared head. I've since had quite a lot of questions about the Cube, as it's a very intriguing piece of kit. But the purpose of this video isn't to dwell on the technicalities of this equipment, but to discuss an example of when gear can genuinely make a difference to how you take photographs, but more crucially, how you approach and see the world. You've perhaps noticed in previous videos that I often have my tripod set up quite high. This isn't laziness, but was born from previous physical constraints that I've discussed before, which have since evolved into a preferred perspective for capturing nature and experiences. I've been spending a lot more time working on fairly steep terrain and shooting across valleys, picking out shapes, patterns and various forms in trees and branches. When working on hillsides and varied terrain, you can very quickly start to run out of leg length in your tripod. And even on my Benro Mark III, I was starting to extend the centre column more often, and perhaps in doing so, sacrificing some stability. Stability that's often important when using high resolution cameras. Back in November, I went out with my friend Joe Cornish to a local woodland that we both discovered, and we were wandering along. It was a lovely peaceful wooded valley, lots of autumn colour still clinging onto the trees, and then the sound of the nearby river in good flow. And then at almost exactly the same time, we both stopped and noticed the photographic appeal of a scene in front of us. So we just wandered around for a little bit and both decided to make an image. Later that evening, Joe sent me the photo that he made, and wiggling across the top was this lovely mossy oak branch which provided framing and flow to the scene. Now, this was the one image that Joe sent me which kind of frustrated me a little bit. I think I was just annoyed at myself for having not noticed this same branch, which was a key element in Joe's composition. Now, as it happened, I was back at the same location a couple of days later and I noticed this branch in question. And I realised that I was never ever going to see this branch, because in order to incorporate it effectively and without distraction, my camera would have to be positioned well above head height. So the scope of my view of the scene was perhaps limited by the capabilities of my tripod. So that got me thinking, how many other times have I perhaps missed better photographs because I didn't think to consider elements higher up due to the constraints of my gear? So I just really wanted to open my eyes to new possibilities. So after much deliberation, I purchased the same Jitso tripod that Joe uses and an Arca-Swiss cube. Both these items were an expensive investment in my photography, but are likely to have a much more significant impact on my workflow and practice in the field than a relatively minor camera upgrade. It started to become quite evident while in Snowdonia just what a difference these products were making by opening up new opportunities through a new perspective and way of seeing. Here's a couple of images where the new setup has allowed me to see and take what I believe to be better photographs. This is a lovely waterfall in Wales, but what struck me just as much was the chaotic but fantastic flow, interaction and convergence of branches. It was only possible to firstly identify the potential and then to capture these branches without a distracting area of sky by fully extending my tripod and positioning the camera well above my head at more than 2 meters high. I used the tilt screen to compose, and fine-tune the position with the dials on the cube was a breeze. Shooting above head height in the landscape isn't something that you see a great deal of. I've often used boulders and walls to gain elevation, but to bring additional tree features and branches into contention, or to omit distracting elements when wandering and looking in a woodland, is going to be a huge advantage. There is of course the disadvantage of additional weight, so this probably isn't the combo you'd want to lug up a mountain, but it's perfectly workable for where I tend to shoot. I'll perhaps cover the cube in more detail in the future, but I would recommend taking a look at Ben Horn's video where he demonstrates the functionality of the Arca-Swiss cube in more detail. It's a fantastic piece of kit. It makes it an absolute breeze to achieve precision in your compositions. It also makes it a lot easier to make adjustments when you're holding an umbrella in one hand, as I often am. It's heavy, it's not as quick to use as a ball head, but it does address the pitfalls of ball heads and is the perfect tool when trying to piece together more complex compositions. Now, I'm not saying for 1 second that you should go out and spend a fortune on an expensive tripod and geared head. I simply wanted to highlight a couple of items that have been of great benefit to my practice, have opened up new opportunities and allowed me to see and consider more when out in the field. You know, expanding our vision in the field and investing in the tools that assist us in doing so is surely going to be of more benefit to our development as photographers, whether that's a taller tripod, a new lens, or anything else which enhances our workflow. You know, gear for gear's sake can feel good and instill some confidence and motivation, but well-considered investments that perhaps address constant frustration, open up new doors of creative opportunity, better our workflow, or potentially broaden our view in the field, for me, that's when gear matters. Right, that's it. I will put some more information in the description with links to these items and also Ben's video. But also a quick note on workshops. My residential workshops are full, but I am always open for one-to-one or private group workshops if you're interested in that. We can go out in North Yorkshire and go to some of the woodlands that I frequent for my own work. So yeah, please take a look at my website and get in touch if you're interested in that. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed this one. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I hope to see you for the next episode.